Publius Virgilius Marin, often nicknamed Virgil, was an ancient Roman poet. His poems have always been read and considered most praiseworthy, linking the founding of Roman culture to the Trojan War, describing one of the most tragic romances ever written, explaining the fundamental source of Roman conflict with Carthage. In this video, you may learn details about one of the books in Virgil's eternal renown epic, the Aeneid. Book 9, Honoring the Fallen. While Aeneas is out gathering allies, Hera, the envious wife of Zeus, sends Iris, her divine messenger, to advise Turnus to immediately attack the Trojan camp. Remember that Turnus feels that Aeneas, the foreign immigrant, is stealing his fiancée. When the Latin troops arrive at the Trojan camp, a lookout is quoted raising the alarm.
Arm, and man the works, prepare your spears and pointed darts, the Latian host appears.
Luckily, the refugees had previously constructed a wooden wall to protect their camp. I find noteworthy the description of how the Latin leader surveys the enemy.
So roams the nightly wolf about the fold, wet with descending showers and stiff with cold. He grins, growls, and howls for the hunger pain. He flaunts his sharp gnashing teeth in vain, and in impotent anger finds no way, with distended paws to grasp the prey.
Yes, Turnus is frustrated, and his frustration only grows as he even fails to burn the Trojan ships. Although it would not have been consequential to the war, as the refugees do not intend to leave, Zeus transforms the ships into sea nymphs. The reason for this divine intervention is obscure. The ships had been crafted from sacred wood. Never mind the details. Although all the Latins were astounded at the divine intervention, Turnus paints a positive light on the occurrence as he tells his troops that now, nonetheless, the Trojan camp is surrounded and unable to seek aid. Furthermore, let me quote him as he says,
"Can they securely trust their feeble fence? A thin partition is but a brief delay. Let all the Tuscans, all the Arcadians, join. Nor these nor those shall prevent my intent. Refresh your bodies and prepare your arms. In the morning we shall conclude this war."
Subsequently, as night falls, the poet describes how each force portions out the duty to keep watch. Among others, Nisus and Euryalus are selected at random to guard the Trojan wall. Once again, note how ancient man trusted random selection. Nisus, who is a bit older, tells Euryalus that he is going to take the initiative and attempt stealthily crossing the Latin position. They must get news about the siege to Aeneas. The young Euryalus is moved by the daring nature of the enterprise and says,
All this and leaving me behind. Am I unworthy, Nisus, to join? May you share some of the glory this will yield. The thing called life, with ease I can disclaim, and think it overvalued at the exchange of fame.
Nisus voices his worries for the younger man, which perhaps foreshadows the subsequent events. Either way, for the time being, both seek out the camp's military council and ask for permission to attempt breaking out of the enemy siege. I should note that as a tragic foreshadowing, many references are made to Euryalus' mother, the possible loss of her relatively young son. The military elders praise the two men's initiative and daring as they say,
"Ye brave young men, what equal gifts can we, in recompense of such desert, decree? The greatest, sure, and best you can receive, the gods and your own conscious worth will give."
I find jocular how someone in the council tells them that when they triumph, the two young men will be rewarded with 12 young and beautiful handmaids. Euryalus responds that he merely wishes for his mother to be cared for if he happens to be killed. The two men leave with the utmost quiet and secrecy. In the Latin camp, they find the enemy is not properly organized. They take the liberty of killing many sleeping foes. In nearly all cases, the assassinations are silent and without any fighting. When they make it to the woods outside the enemy position, however, their luck changes. They are discovered by a troop of horsemen and are forced to flee with all their might. In the flight, the young man is separated from the elder. In the darkness, Nisus feels forced to return and search for Euryalus. He finds that his companion is in trouble. He is surrounded by a small group of enemies. Nisus prays for divine strength, throws a deadly javelin at a horseman. A fight ensues and, alas, they are both killed. The poet eulogizes the fallen warriors as he says,
"O happy friends, for, if my verse can give immortal life, your fame shall ever live, fixed as the Capitol's foundation lies, and spread wherever the Roman eagle flies."
The next day, although themselves surprised at how many were assassinated, the Latins, in an attempt to scare the Trojans, impale the heroes' heads on pikes and parade them around the Trojan walls, of course. Euryalus' mother sees his son's severed head, and the poet quotes her.
Was it on this face my famished eyes I fed? Ah, how unlike the living is the dead! How could thou leave me, cruel, thus alone? Not one kind kiss from a departing son. For this, alas, I left my needful ease, exposed my life to winds and winter seas. Thou, Jove, I beg, conclude my woe. Send me thunderstruck to rest below.
After the mortifying parade, the Latins attack. Mention is made of how the Trojans, by their prior war, are expert defenders. Nonetheless, the Latins meet some successes. They manage to bring down a large wooden tower, for example. What ensues is a very prolonged and, in my mind, overly complicated description of much fighting. Along the description, always, perhaps mimicking Homer, there are most striking analogies, consider.
Thus on some silver swan or timorous hare, Jove's bird comes sousing down from upper air. So seizes the grim wolf the tender lamb, in vain lamented by the bleeding dam.
I find it curious, as it could be argued that such comparisons unquestionably diminish any possible moral valuation. These deaths are like the deaths natural to life, nature, the cosmos. Pray and prayed. Not evil versus good. Unfortunately, this is not the time or place to discuss what is Homeric morality, what is the often utterly misunderstood moral messages in these epic poems. For a little about that, make sure to watch the final section of this series. The descriptions are also very gory and bloody. On one occasion, as Turnus enters a killing spree, consider.
The second shaft comes swift and unespied. It pierces his hand and nails it to his side, perforating his breathing lungs and beating heart. The soul comes issuing out and hisses against the dart. Thrice whirls the belt around his head and flings the heated lead half melted as it flies. It pierces his hollow temples his brain through. The youth tumbles down as he kicks the ground.
If it were a movie, these scenes would not be for children, LOL. At one moment during the battle, Turnus' brother-in-law shouts insults at the defending Trojans. He refers to the war in Troy and how the Latins rear their children in a Spartan manner.
Strong from the cradle of a sturdy brood, we subject our newborns to the river. No sports but what belong to war they know. To break the stubborn colt, to bend the bow. At all stages of life for war prepare. No class or inheritance is exempt.
Notice, once again, war and such deaths are a natural element of existence. In response to these insults, the son of Aeneas, Ascanius, shoots an arrow that kills the speaker. Seeing the young boy grow impetuous and overdaring, Apollo intervenes in human form and tells the Trojans to keep the young prince out of harm's way. Thus, he is retired from the wall, but will fight again later. There is much more fighting that I will skip over. I should note that this portion and the subsequent book are most like Homer's Iliad. At one point, even, Turnus brands himself a new Achilles. He says this as he manages to break through the Trojan wall. However, pushing too far, he is quickly left unattended and unsupported. Finding himself in peril, the poet describes his situation and mentality.
He loses while in vain he presses on, nor will his courage let him dare to run. So Turnus fares, and, unresolved of flight, briefly moves back as soon as he withdraws. Twice again, in rage, the combat he renews.
As he is attacked on all sides, The poet says that Turnus' armor is worn, his shield is covered with darts and arrows, he is exhausted and bloody. Thus, Hera intervenes and by her divine power sweeps him out of danger. In the next book, Aeneas will have to rescue his besieged brethren. Now, as usual, I gift you an aphorism that I came up with as I read this poem.
Fame is never cheaper than when it merely costs life.
If you enjoy or gain from my aphorisms, know that I have thousands. I will be writing books with short thematic essays composed out of aphorisms. These essays are profound and intriguing yet easy to read. For very cheap copies, look up Protagoras Pause in the Amazon website. I repeat, Protagoras Pause, that's my name.